One of the biggest lies of the ruling regime sold to the wider world is that there is no alternative to the status quo. But you all know there is an alternative. Well organized, fully prepared, perfectly qualified, and popularly supported alternative called the National Council of Resistance of Iran, whose main component is called the MEK.
I think it's very important that we recognize that there is a clear alternative. The ruling clerics tell us otherwise, right? They tell us that there is no alternative to the existing regime. But every week in hundreds of cities and townships across Iran, we can see that there is an alternative. The MEK provides a solution to so many problems, not only for Iran, but for the broader Middle East as well. There is an alternative.
Fourth pillar of such a new strategy, hopefully for the European Union and hopefully for the whole world, must be the recognition and cooperation with a democratic opposition that is seen as the only alternative, especially the NCRI. So, Mr. Sahrawi, it's time to start for the Western leaders to engage with you, to engage with the NCRI, to engage with all democratic forces in Iran, to prepare the future. Because a future there is for Iran, but it will be a future without Shah, without Mullah.
We know that the surviving remnants of the Shah's dictatorship and the theocratic regime are doing all they can to target and pursue the NCRI and the PMOI. But they don't understand that the NCRI is the very embodiment of the will of the Iranian people, and that the NCRI will prevail. Because the brutality of the regime only strengthens the determination of the NCRI to fight even harder for the liberation of the Iranian people. Democratic change and the creation of a democratic republic in Iran are drawing ever closer.
The alternative, we know, is to oppose the regime. Because the alternative to the regime is not chaos. It is this: Iran's well-organized and democratic opposition. The government of Iran is a global cancer, and the only cure is regime change by the Iranian people themselves in free and open elections. And in those elections, this organization, the National Council of Resistance of Iran, will be ready to put forth a fully viable alternative. It's one with long-standing organization and deep social roots. It has an active network inside and outside of Iran and capable leadership.
And the only way we will discover for sure who is on the side of the Iranian people is by allowing the opportunity for free and fair expression of the public will. And that's what causes me to turn, if I may, to Maryam Rajavi's 10-point plan, the philosophy and intended policy programme of the National Council of Resistance of Iran. No alternative, my friends. It is, in fact, one of the most eloquent and articulate and comprehensive statements of alternative that any Democrat could wish to see.
Given these circumstances, there is a growing consensus that we have to reassess the current policies towards Iran. The West should build a broader coalition to cooperate with the Iranian resistance, particularly the National Council of Resistance of Iran, as a true representative of the Iranian people.
This gathering today is therefore highly necessary to reiterate the need to support all those who are vying for a different Iran, enabling especially the many millions of young people to express their voice in freedom and to meet their aspirations in a country that will be democratic, open to the world, and upholding international law. And this gathering underscores that the opposition inside and outside Iran stands ready with alternatives to bring back Iran as a trusted partner in promoting peace and prosperity in the country and in the wider region. I therefore commend you and your movement to persevering in leading the campaign for change. Change that is long overdue, change that is at hand.
Now, the struggle for freedom and democracy in Iran is a universal fight for human rights and dignity, for the protection of our own justice and democratic systems. And it's time for the free world to support the legitimacy of the NCRI and its resistance units against the clerical regime in Iran.
In this crucial moment, the people of Malta stand in solidarity with your movement as the viable alternative to the Iranian regime. We see this as a comprehensive roadmap for a transition to a democratic governance. Together, we want to affirm our unwavering support for the upholding of justice and human rights. As members of Parliament, we support the NCRI as a moral imperative. We call on the international community to recognize this legitimate alternative to the current regime and support your fight for justice, including the blacklisting of the RIGC.
The NCRI also put forward democratic roadmap in Madam Rajavi's 10-year point plan for future of Iran. These are the characteristics of a true opposition and alternatives to the regime, so-called the NCRI, PMI, and Madam Rajavi's in Tehran's prime target. As over 500 cross-party colleagues in the UK, you saw that particular walking, has signed, and I signed that particular book. It's time for the international community to recognize the democratic alternative and stand with the Iranian people.
The Iranian regime maintains its power by perpetuating the myth that no alternative exists. This is clearly a narcissist mullah deception. This narrative is powerfully challenged by those who are represented here. The National Council of Resistance of Iran has been actively opposing the regime for 43 years, offering a democratic and viable alternative. Mrs. Rajavi's unwavering commitment to democratic values and her clear vision for a free and democratic Iran make her the legitimate alternative to the current regime. Dear Madam Rajavi, your fight is our fight. It is the fight for freedom and democracy.
Now, it is not for the democratic world to impose its political will on Iran, but it is critically important that the international community support a viable alternative to its current regime. The National Council of Resistance of Iran presents a democratic and credible alternative that the freedom-loving world can and should support. For over 43 years, the NCRI has demonstrated strong leadership and commitment to democratic principles.
Dear friends, Honorable Madame Rajavi, ladies and gentlemen, what is my takeaway from this year's summit? First, supporting the National Council of Resistance of Iran, NCRI, as the legitimate alternative to Iran's current regime. I strongly believe, I'm convinced that is a paramount for several strategic and ethical reasons. And I think that political leaders in the last 2 days laid out those reasons very, very well and eloquently.